I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes.
That was the biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. You know, like, hey, you know, life sucks sometimes, and you need the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new content.
Confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and DeGassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.
Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. This is round number 4 of the season, coming to you today from Navarra. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me, working the comms and the cams, is Josh Wilkie. And now, Josh, this track is one that exists for sure in the world of motorsports. A couple of weeks ago, in fact, during the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors broadcast here on SMB, at this very track, I described the driving experience around this circuit as drinking scalding hot coffee with a face full of Novocaine. It's a track that I'm trying to think of the best word to describe this. It's a track that I'm not a fan of, to say the very least, but you have some experience driving around this track in that Formula Ford Weekend Warriors race that kicked that season off. So I want to ask you, heading into this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors race today, what are your thoughts on this track and your thoughts heading into this race?
Yeah, Ron, well, I've had the pleasure 2 times, actually, of racing around here, and it would be the first time this year. First in the, I believe it was the FFs, and then the SRFs. I'd have to agree with you. Initially, I did not like this track at all, especially the first 1, 2, 3 complex of corners. And then even into the next part after that is actually quite difficult and very technical. After that, it's pretty standard fare, but still a pretty technical track nonetheless. You really got to hit your brake zones. You've really got to make sure that you keep your momentum up. Is very important, especially obviously in these Vs, and that's definitely going to be what they're looking for today, as well as 2 pretty long straightaways out here as well to get some drafting done. So it should be a pretty interesting track for these cars today, Ron.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a glorified game of leapfrog that we have on our hands here with the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. It's been a fantastically entertaining season thus far. Kicked it off at Alton Park, continued at VIR, and last round of the season was at Mid-Ohio just 1 week ago here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. However, this season has been incredibly fun. We actually have some... Ooh, my apologies. It's probably a bad thing that I was eating my lunch right before this broadcast started, but it's been a fantastically entertaining season thus far, and we've got some interesting championship fights to take a look at. I think we'll take a look at the point standings as they stand with only 3 races on the board of this 13-race calendar. Got 2 classes to worry about, unlike the other Weekend Warriors broadcast where we do have 3. And here is the top class, that being Spec 1. And there are 4 points in it at the moment between Thor Tulo in the number 90 car and Jason Green in P2. Tulo kicked the season off with back-to-back victories, 1 at Alton Park and 1 at VIR, and then Jason Green was victorious at Mid-Ohio just 1 week ago. They're slowly building that gap between themselves and Jim Brewster, currently about 24 points in it between Brewster and Tulo, and 20 points between Brewster and Green. Michael McConnell and Guido Marzuki going to round out your top 5 in the Spec 1 standings. Gotta say, SMB's very own Adam Thompson representing us strong, currently in 6th at this point in the season. Switching over to the S1 category just at the last race of the season at Mid-Ohio. And here's the Spec 2 class. And as you can see, Gary Wolbolt is at the front there in the 902 car, 183 points on the board currently. Matthias Morin, the Canadian, right behind in P2. That's not a whole lot of time at all, not a whole lot of points at all. Only 7, I guess it would be. My public school math skills possibly failing me. Dan Szynski in 3rd, Morn Human in 4th, and Nick Tulo running after top 5 in the Spec 2 category. And look at that tie between Human and Tulo for P4 and P5 respectively, tied at 162 points, and only 1 point behind is David Fitzgerald in P6. But this championship across both classes is looking incredibly entertaining, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be pretty tight all season. Up in the S1s there, we have seen a little bit of a dip in participation here for the Navarra round. But again, we've got about 26 drivers out there, so it should be a pretty tight race again. Always is with the V's, of course. They're nose to tail everywhere.
Yeah, these Formula V's always put on a pretty good show, regardless of what kind of track we're running on. So around a circuit like Navarra, really designed for motorcycles. However, it is still a fantastic ride. Well, for me, it's not fantastic, right? I've had my fair share of very bad moments around here, but it's definitely a track where it's an acquired taste, to say the very least. But this track will probably put on some pretty good racing here with the Formula V's, considering those long flat-out blasts that Josh mentioned earlier. So we're going to be taking a look at this field as they begin to hit the racetrack for this qualifying session. Going to be riding on board with Jason Green for a little bit to get a good sense of how this circuit is. It's one of the newest added into iRacing, only added, I think, for Season 3 of 2024. So one of the newest tracks into the game. It's definitely an intriguing ride in the world of motorsports, and funnily enough, the track in real life has been reconfigured ever since it was scanned and added into iRacing. So not very representative of the layout that we have here in real life. Still, it's an interesting ride for sure in the world of iRacing. A lot of these drivers gotta be along for the ride for sure over the 30 minutes of racing action that we have coming up after this 15-minute long qualifying session that we find ourselves in at the moment. 15 minutes long, 4 laps at these drivers' disposal to try and get the job done around a track where in the practice session earlier, we were seeing lap times above that 2-minute mark. So this is probably going to be one of the few occasions in this series in which those 15 minutes are definitely going to be used by all of these drivers.
Yeah, for sure. It's a bit of a long lap in these cars around here, so it's going to take, you really want to get out there early and start putting laps down right away for sure, just to make sure that you get them all in. And it is a very difficult track, as I was mentioning before. Hopefully we can pick somebody up here eventually through T1, T2, and T3, which is just probably one of the most confusing and unintuitive corners I've ever tried to attack in a race car. So it's just very difficult. You want to keep turning in, and if you turn in, the car just wants to dip out on you. So pretty interesting. After that as well, you have another complex that just doesn't really get any easier after that. It's a bit of a mind bender, this track. See if we can follow Adam through a couple of the first complex of corners here, where it just sort of begs you to go faster and faster and faster until you lose the back end of the car. Haven't really done it in the V's. Have you driven around here in the V's, Ron?
I have not, sadly, because of some other broadcasting commitments that I had to do earlier on today, being on the air for 4.5 hours, so I was unable to join the drivers in the Formula V Friday night draft party that these drivers usually organize. But the Formula V is usually momentum-based, and around a track this stop and starty, it kind of doesn't fit too well, at least easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So it is going to be a bit of a challenge out there for these guys as well. You saw that line that Adam took through the corner there was pretty much the perfect line that you want to take through here. When you're kind of coming up on this corner for the first time, you don't really want to go as wide right here. You can see the line that she's taken very straight and then out to this curb, and then you sort of square it off, another apex right there, and then out to the curb again. This is probably the hardest part. If you can get out and touch that curb and get slowed down properly and get turned in early and on the power, that's where you're finding all of the lap time around here. And as we come down into this section as well, you got another very difficult, sort of mind-bendy section here as well. So you want to come in and sort of touch this curb on the left-hand side and then all the way out. You don't really want to touch this curb too much on the right-hand side because it will unsettle the car. And then a late apex into here and on the gas early. Another very strange corner at first. And then the rest of the track is pretty standard fare after that. It's very just kind of straight line, slow down, straight line, slow down. Nonetheless, you've got to get all that right, especially in a car that's so important for kinetic energy and moving forward and momentum. You really need to make sure you get those stops and starts just right.
And this is going to be one of the biggest stops right here down into turn number 9. A fantastic overtaking opportunity that we're definitely going to be seeing utilized by a lot of these drivers here in this 30-minute race that we have coming up. Then we're going to be heading into one of the most hellish sections in my mind, and also one of the sections that has been majorly reconfigured in real life. That's a turn number 11 and 12 section. See Michelle Lynn in the 05 car exiting turn number 12 right now down into turn 13. Lucky number 13 towards the end of this lap. A decent overtaking opportunity, but also an opportunity for some drivers to maybe have a little bit of chicanery go on for them. The kink of turn number 14 going to bring this lap nearly to a close. This hairpin of turn 15 certainly will. That's another good overtaking opportunity that we may see used in some higher power race cars. But here in the Formula V's, I think going for a move like that is pretty much just game over, because you're going on to the start-finish straightaway, which feels like it takes forever in these Formula V's. I could just yap and yap and yap and yap and yap and yap and yap, and we still won't even be able to make it into turn number 1 following Michelle Lynn, because that is a very long start-finish straightaway in these Formula V's. And despite this track being a tick over 2 miles long, it is still a very long ride in these Formula V's for the simple sake that the average speed of these drivers around this racetrack is probably one of the lowest that we'll see all season long.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of time to get up to speed here. Obviously, we're going to get a little bit more speed once we get into the drafting, and there's going to be some pretty solid drafting around here, I think. But yeah, it's so stop-starty, and it's a pretty technical course in the first half, so you're not really going to have a chance to really let the V eat. So we'll see how she goes here while we watch Brad Cathcart, see if he can't put in a better time.
He's currently qualified in P15 at this point in time. As it stands at the moment, Jason Green is on the provisional pole. The driver of the number 1 car currently slotted in P1 at a 2-minute 2.624. Lots of 2s in the span of just barely any time at all. Meanwhile, in the Spec 2 class, currently slotted in P2, is Stefan Heemskerk, the driver who won in Spec 2 1 week ago at Mid-Ohio. Ended up finishing P4 in that race overall. What we're seeing at this point, though, Josh, is some drivers in the Spec 2 category really getting dicey with a lot of the Spec 1 drivers, albeit we haven't had a lot of the heavy hitters really put lap times on the board. However, we have seen some Jason Green still putting lap times on the board. Alan DeGassis, Thor Tulo, Adam Thompson, Jesus Rodriguez, the reigning Spec 1 champion in this series, putting lap times on the board. But look at Heemskerk and Trent Kramer really sticking it to these S1 drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have a little bit of mix-up there at the top of the field. You know, I like to remember back to when I first started racing with these guys in the FFs and the SRFs, and you know, I could put a pretty decent lap time in there, and sometimes I could get up, you know, into the top 5-ish or something like that in qualifying. But then when it came time to racing, the S1 guys shined, obviously. I was just not ready to be in the mix with the S1 guys yet, and they raced so well that, you know, we'll really see how it happens here. Obviously, this is going to be a heavy draft track, and I'm imagining anybody, maybe even in the top 10 there, is going to be in a big train of cars, and when they're in a big train of cars like that around somewhere like this, anybody can take it on the last lap.
Oh, for sure, especially considering the stop-starty nature towards the end of this lap. You've got the heavy braking zones of turn number 11, turn number 13, and turn 15 as well. That can create a big concertina effect in these packs of Formula V race cars. So we may end up seeing a pile-up towards the end of this race. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I've seen some very strange things with this series, and we've had some strange moments thus far, mainly the first 2 races. With the finishing order between P1 and P2, it was only about 7,000ths of a second, not just out of the first race, but out of the first 2 combined. So it's been an incredibly close season with some fantastically entertaining finishes. But off the back of what we saw in Mid-Ohio 1 week ago, with a lot of drivers running into trouble and running into each other for that matter, we may see some of these drivers try and push that envelope just a little bit more and maybe push it a little bit too far over the edge here in Navarra.
Yeah, I would say so for sure. Again, just the nature of this track, the you know, as we were mentioning there, the first few complexes of corners are not easy. You might lose a couple guys there. There's a lot of stop-start here, so you're really going to have to play ball with people around you because there's going to be an accordion effect a lot, almost every lap, especially if you're nose to tail. So you're going to have to be very careful. There's going to be the urge every single lap to want to pass people. You're going to get that speed. Even if you're a little slower on some of the lap, it may allow you to stay behind the guy that's a little bit faster than you, which is going to be a nuisance for him and so on. So we'll see how it goes here today.
And we're seeing these drivers tackle this qualifying session at the moment. It's still Jason Green on the provisional pole. Adam Thompson slipping his way up into second. Stefan Heemskerk, the driver from either Belgium, Netherlands, or Luxembourg, wherever he may be from. He's currently slotted in third as it stands at the moment. 0.4 of a second off of our pole sitter of Green. Meanwhile, Jason Perry just slipped his way up into fifth. The driver that finished second last time out at Mid-Ohio, currently slotted into P5 in this qualifying session. In the, I can't even say the early stages because we already have 9.5 minutes on the board, and some of these drivers are already exhausting the laps that they have allocated towards them. Adam Thompson, he's gone down pit lane. Not sure if there's some sort of incident for him, that or he just reached the end of his qualifying session. I gotta mention a driver, there we can see Adam Thompson, he's currently stopped in pit lane, not inside the race car at this point in time. Gotta say, there's a driver running down in P18, he's just gone back to the pits, but Brian Stasinski, he is we've seen a lot of him thus far here on the adventures of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors, a Formula Vee driver in real life, and I gotta say, he's not doing this race, he's not doing it from his house and the sim rig that he may have in his room. He is doing that from inside of a trailer at this year's SCCA National Runoffs up in Road America. So, well done to Brian for bringing that stuff along. I gotta say, he's been holding some pretty fun get-togethers there at Road America. I remember I was briefly considering going there earlier on in the year, however, life getting a tiny bit in the way and not allowing me to go there, but maybe someday, maybe next year, we'll just have to wait and see. Going up to Road America, got some good cheese up there in Wisconsin, and be there for a pretty good shindig with Brian holding a whole bunch of esports events there, and of course all the racing action and festivities you usually expect from the SCCA National Championship runoffs every single fall. But with this qualifying session slowly drawing to a close, even more drivers are exhausting their limit of qualifying laps. There's Michelle Lynn, who I believe is on her final qualifying lap. There's Russell Telkar. He is off the circuit right now on the outskirts of turn number 1 and 2. These drivers slowly bringing this qualifying session to a close, but still setting some pretty good lap times, with Perry jumping his way up to third.
Yeah, it looks like we're just kind of winding down qualifying here. A few minutes left. I would imagine most people have exhausted their laps at this stage. We'll try to get a couple more in. I just mentioned you actually, Dan Sazinski in the chat saying this isn't really one of his favorite tracks, and he's kind of glad this is one of his drop rounds this week. So it is kind of nice in this league. You get a drop round or two. So if you're busy or you got something going on or family stuff, or you just don't like the track or you don't own it or whatever, you can drop it, and they'll give you a couple points so you can keep going in the championship for the rest of the season. So we'll see how his counterpart does here today, who did make the track and does apparently like it.
I mean, currently qualified in P18. We'll see how Brian can do in this race that we have coming up. Got a fantastic schedule of Formula Vee Weekend Warriors races this season here on SMB, exclusively on Slow Motion Broadcasting. We've already had races at Alton Park, VIR, and Mid-Ohio. Got to continue the season today at Navarra. Got to be heading to Motorsports Arena Oschersleben in 1 week's time, running on the Grand Prix layout. Muskogen will follow right after that. Now we're going to be heading to Summit Point, Zandvoort, Indianapolis, Lime Rock Park, Circuit de la Danon, Laguna Seca, and Okayama to bring this 13-round calendar to a close, stretching from now all the way through until I think the first week of December, unless I'm very much mistaken, running through from the beginning of the summer all the way knocking on the door of my 20th birthday later on this year. So we've got a fantastic slate of races to look forward to from not just this series, but the entire Weekend Warriors world as well. That gives you more of a reason to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss any of the awesome racing action that we have here exclusively on Slow Motion Broadcasting. But this qualifying session slowly drawing to a close. I think we should probably talk about the people who keep the lights on and the people who are allowed to make these broadcasts possible, the people who are vital of making these broadcasts possible. Today's broadcast of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series on Slow Motion Broadcasting is brought to you today by Will at Steel Valley Vapors. Visit www.steelvalleyvapors.com to learn more and use code DOITFORDALE to get 15% off at checkout. I'll tell you what, Will has some good taste in supporting such an exciting and entertaining series and also making these broadcasts possible. Even though there's some apprehension about the way this racetrack is, at least in my mind, Josh, we're still expecting a pretty good show, especially with those long straightaways. Going to create quite a tantalizing prospect, especially if you're in the draft.
Yeah, I think honestly it will. This place does seem to actually breed some pretty good racing, as well as, like you were saying earlier, it's a fairly new track, so we don't have a bunch of people out there who've done hundreds or maybe even thousands of laps around here. It's going to be fairly new to most of the drivers probably, and a lot of the time that just makes for good racing. It allows you to be a little bit more apprehensive behind the wheel and stuff. You're not quite as confident about everything you're doing out there, and that can kind of play into things as well as far as where you're going to finish.
We're just going to have to wait and see how these drivers try and tackle the 30-minute race that they have right in front of their face, set to begin in the not-too-distant future. Still got a little bit of time left in this qualifying session before we click on over to the race, which is promised to be quite interesting to say the very least. That run through turn number 1, 2, and 3, as you pointed out earlier, Josh, that section is just oh so hard to psych out.
Yeah, it really is. It really, really is. To try to sort out a bunch of cars through there is very difficult. You want to go up the inside in that corner. It doesn't work. You can't go up the inside in that corner. It's either going to cause you to run into somebody on the outside, or it's just very unstable and slow on the inside too. So I watched it during the races that I was in. Every once in a while, somebody would make the mistake of trying to take you up the inside into T1. And it almost never works out, especially if the guy on the outside doesn't see it coming. It can be disaster. But we got a grid coming here, Ron.
That we absolutely do, ready to get things ready to rock and roll. I like the slowdown sign that they have on the pit lane here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. And it's going to be Jason Green leading them to green. Like what I did there, that was completely unintentional. He's going to be starting in P1 in the number 1 car. Adam Thompson going to join him on the front row. Jason Caperi going to be starting this race in 3rd, next to Stefan Heemskerk in 4th. Trent Kramer going to be starting this race in P5, next to Guido Marzuki in the number 19 car. He's going to be starting this race in 6th. Alan DeGassis, Jesus Rodriguez, Thor Tula, and Morn Human going to round out your top 10. Gotta say, Stefan Heemskerk is going to be the highest starting Spec 2 driver. Jim Brewster, who we saw involved in that fantastic photo finish at VIR a couple of weeks ago, he's going to be starting this race in 11th, next to Michelle Lynn in 12th. That's going to be Russell Telker, Brad Cathcart, Ken Poulin, Ryan Surelik, I apologize if I killed that pronunciation. He's going to be starting this race in 16th. Jeff Jacobson, Hank Mell, Brian Stasinski, and Gary Walbalt going to round out your top 20.
Yeah, and then we have Michael Laturo, Don Parsons, Jason Grider, and Nick Tullo rounding out the top 24. And I believe we got a couple more drivers in here, bringing out the back of the field. We've got David Fitzgerald and Joshua Flores rounding out the 26-car field for today.
Gotta say, it's one of the lower participated races that we've had thus far this season, but still 26 Formula V's. Excited to get things ready to rock and roll. Gotta say, we have been spoiled thus far this season with some fantastic car counts here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors. It has been a fantastically entertaining season thus far. Set to continue here for round number 4 at Navarra. You can see that field heading their way around turn number 11 and 12 right now. There they are exiting turn 12. That's such a tricky corner with those killer curbs on the inside in these Formula V's. You hit those, and if you hit those at a bad angle with a little bit more speed, you can pretty much just send yourself into low Earth orbit. Considering this racetrack's situation in Europe, you could probably launch yourself into Switzerland if you hit one of the bumps well enough. But nevertheless, the field ready to get things ready to rock and roll from the 4th race of this Formula V Weekend Warrior season. Exclusively here on SMB, the field is now in the hands of our pole sitter, Jason Green, going to be leading them to green with a green light on his dashboard. The green flag is going to be asked, and the drivers are on their way. It is a very disorganized start, it must be said. Jason Green stomped on that gas early. He wanted nothing to do with a pack of Formula V slowly reeling him in, heading down into turn number 1, 2, and 3. But speaking of 3 wide, a little bit farther behind, with Jason Perry and Adam Thompson getting oh so dicey, but heading down into turn number 3, and a spin for Perry, running in the 3rd spot. That's a big mistake from Perry, and that's going to take him out of contention. Thankfully, he rejoins the race without any further incident. However, that has careened his way down the running order. The driver that started this race in 3rd is all the way down now. Looking through, I can barely see him on our live timing screen. He is well farther back down at the moment in P18. Sorry, P17, my apologies, but nevertheless, this has been a truly dramatic start at the front of the field, and they were playing a very dangerous game, Josh. Nearly 3 wide heading down into turn number 1 and 2.
Yeah, it was sort of just like I was saying there, Ron. That first corner can just feel like a bit of a parking lot, honestly. In the first, it looks like we got a bit of drafting going on here. Not quite close enough yet, but yeah, you can definitely. It's hard to sort yourself out in that corner when you spread out 3 wide. There's just so many lines to take, but there's only really one that works, and unfortunately, Jason Perry found that out.
And that's such a shame for him to have a mistake like that early on, but the thing is, he made that mistake early on. He's still got a whole lot of this race left to go to try and dust himself off a little bit and get back in a good position. That's a spin and a whole lot of drama coming out of turn number 12. That's multiple cars going off the track. Thortulo, Ellen DeGassis, I see Michelle Lynn involved in that, along with David Fitzgerald, I believe. A whole lot of cars going off the circuit. Looked like one spin, and the rest of the field just scattered, heading through one of the final corners around this racetrack. We got a side-by-side fight for the final podium spot overall, and the lead in the Spec 2 category. Stefan Heemskirk and Trent Kramer trading blows like it's going out of style at the front. Meanwhile, Jason Green is going to be leading this first lap of the race, extending that gap down to 1.1 seconds between himself and Adam Thompson in P2. But Trent Kramer slipping in underneath the back of Heemskirk's car, going to be enjoying that drift, heading down into the braking zone of turn number 3. A very challenging braking zone to try and get right, but it's a good overtaking opportunity as Guido Marzucchi is trying to improve, getting that move done up into 4th. Well done, Guido, the Italian. Always pretty fast in these Formula V Weekend Warriors races, improving that quite nicely there with a solid move on Trent Kramer heading down into turn 3.
Yeah, that was a solid move by Guido there for sure. He just snuck right in. Almost looked like he actually caught him sleeping a little bit. I don't think he was expecting him to come up the inside so abruptly like that and forcefully, but he did it and got it done really clean there. Really unfortunate about the accident we just had a minute ago as well. It looked like it's somebody who kind of just spun on their own. I think it might have even been Thor, and then there was just a bunch of reaction to it, and it looked like it just caused a cascade of people and cars everywhere. So that's unfortunate. We'll have to catch up with some replays here shortly.
I was about to ask if there were a whole lot of replays, I'm sure, of that drama coming out of turn number 12. That's just such a tricky section to try and psych out. As much as the opening sector of this lap is very hard to try and get right, this section I always find incredibly difficult as well. These corners feel like they're blind for some reason. It's not the apexes being blind, it's really the exit being blind. You have no idea where to put your race car coming out of the corners. We're seeing another spin. That's Morn Human going around, coming out of turn number 12. Morn Human, the South African, in the 702 car, trying to get back going in the right direction, but he's going to lose out on a whole lot of time. Now careening his way down the running order. Looks like he's going to nearly drop outside the top 20.
Yeah, it's too bad. Oh, that's another spin
again
from Morn as well. Looks like he's heated those tires up. Once you get those tires heated up, you really got to calm down in the car and just drive nice and smooth and not hit the brakes or the gas too hard anymore. It's very counterintuitive because you're just hopped up from the spin and you want to gain up all these positions, but if you just smack the gas and try to drive really hard, that's going to happen again. So it looks like he's just caught up in his own head a little bit there. Hopefully he can put her back together here shortly.
Oh, and a fight going on, continuing, involving Guido Marzucchi. This time he's trying to take the final overall podium spot from Stefan Heemskirk. And if Heemskirk runs into some difficulties, Trent Kramer may try and make his life even more difficult to try and snag the lead in the Spec 2 category, but still Jason Green leading it over Adam Thompson. Guido Marzuki with a fantastic start, jumping his way up into third, but Jason Green, he has been uncontested thus far. And got to take a look at a whole lot of replays of the drama that we've had thus far in this race. Here's the first one involving Jason Perry in the number 97 car. You can see him involved in that 3-wide drama heading down through the first few turns of this lap.
Yep.
Hit that curb on the inside of turn 2 and just hit the inside of Adam Thompson car, and it sends him spinning around like a top.
Yeah, so that's kind of exactly what I was explaining there. You go up the inside, and then that gap just reduces. The person on the outside, if you go up the inside, has nowhere to go. They have to fill that space that Jason Perry was trying to get into there. And unfortunately, you can see Adam. I'm sure he knew that he was there, and he knows that he's coming, but there's not a whole lot he can do. If he opens up the wheel, he goes way off track or loses control of the car. And if he doesn't tighten it up, the same thing happens. So you just have two cars meeting in the same piece of road there. It's a very difficult corner to pass on.
It's exactly right. My thoughts exactly there, Josh. That section, I could best compare it to the first section of Portimao, the old F1 track that has been recently added into iRacing as well. A near stack up heading through turn number 13. That was a stack up for sure. And Adam Thompson coming down into...
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Please don't tell me. Please don't tell me that the fuel-saving maestro himself has run out yet again. For the love of all that's holy in the world, Adam, don't tell me. He's disconnected from the session. Now we take a look at a replay, possibly riding on board if we can, Josh. You see a big sideways snap for Jesus Rodriguez a little bit farther behind. Oh, it seemed like that car was still going all right.
Hard to say. I think he may run out of gas. I wonder if he went out with qualifying fuel in the car. I'm not sure what happened there. Or maybe he's just got something going on at home there and he had to pull over, but it does look like he's out of the race for today.
Oh, that is going to be a shame. Hopefully we'll be able to try and figure out exactly what went wrong between now and the end of this broadcast, but tough stuff for Adam. He was running in a fantastic spot. However, it looks like his day here from the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors is not going to continue. Meanwhile, gotta take a look. I believe this is a replay of a move that Jeff Jacobson pulled off not terribly long ago. This was side-by-side action heading down into the first few corners at the very beginning of this lap. Jacobson trying to get that move done around the outside. Not sure who that is. And he was getting that move done on, or trying to get that move done on. And Cathcart, yes, thank you very much, Josh. So that was him and Cathcart battling hard through the first few corners, and they get away with that fairly scot-free. I gotta say, speaking of getting away with things fairly scot-free, Jason Green is now leading this race by over 2.5 seconds over Guido Marzuki in P2. So talk about a foothold on this race. That is a crushing performance thus far, but nothing more like a proud just jinxed.
Yeah, you know, that doesn't surprise me a whole bunch. It's all about being smooth in these cars, and maybe even more so. Of all the tracks that we've visited this season, this one is probably the one that you need to be the most smooth at so far. And Jason Green's a very smooth driver, and he puts in the practice, so it doesn't surprise me that he's out there kind of pulling away slowly here.
Oh, and aerial acrobatics for Jason Perry, making big contact, heading through turn number 13. Perry, the driver that we saw go out in a cloud of steam at the very beginning of the race, heading through into turn number 3. He has another moment. This time it is going to affect his race quite a lot. There's got to be some damage on that car. These Formula V's are tough, but not that tough. That was a pretty significant whack. But right now, 3 wide hang down into turn number 1. Stefan Heemskerk in the midst of that. Kramer and Marzuki battling hard. Look at that. Heemskerk understandably backing out of what could have been a big source of drama.
Yeah, absolutely. So he knows what we know there, Ron, for sure. He backed out of that knowing there is nowhere for me to go here. If you look at it from his cockpit right there, before that, it looks like you're clear sailing. It looks like you're going to make a pass and you're in a really good spot to do it. But that corner just reduces on you, and he knew it. So he backed out of it smartly.
So that is going to be crisis averted for the drivers trying to battle hard. I gotta say, it's still an ongoing fight with Kramer, Marzuki, and Heemskerk. And as those drivers start to battle, the drivers a little bit farther down the road begin to pull away. Looking at this fight right now between Cyrillik, Poulin, Jacobson, and Brad Cathcart. This was a fight that we saw Jason Perry involved in not terribly long ago. Perry, of course, nearly flipping out of this fight, literally and metaphorically speaking. It was a big source of drama, and I believe it was Surlik that he made contact with heading down into turn number 13 not terribly long ago. But Ken Poulin now going to be at the front of this train of Formula V race cars, running just barely inside the top 10 at the moment. Poulin in 7th, Surlik in 8th, Jacobson and Cathcart rounding at your top 10. And you also have to say Thortula right behind. This is a disappointing result as it stands currently for the driver leading the Spec 1 championship. So not sure why he's down the running order as he is, but nevertheless some incidents involving him. Gotta take a look at a replay.
Yeah, so he was the one actually who kicked this big schmozzle off earlier here. I believe he had a little twitch right here, and he lost the rear end, and then we have a bunch of people. Oh, no, you know what? There was 2 simultaneously going on, so it wasn't him, actually. There was another crash right behind him during this as well that just kicked off another one, so we'll have to have a good look at that. I believe it was Alan DeGassis who kind of spun in sympathy here. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, so he's going to get out a bit wide. That was pretty much the line, actually. Oh, he had a little help from Michelle in there by the looks of it. Go for it.
That was a big amount of help from Michelle. So that was the drama that went down heading into turn number 13. That, I believe, was on lap 2, unless I'm very much mistaken. That has really affected some of these drivers' races. Who was that? That may have been Tulo going off the track, heading down the start-finish straightaway, down into turn at number 1. That, I believe, was Thor Tulo. So another bit of drama, and meanwhile was dead. Nick Tulo having a big slide, heading off into turn number 3, trying to win over some style points from us on the broadcast, but not winning out on any more positions or time for that matter. He's currently running P18 overall. But Tulo having another moment. We just saw him involved in that fight involving Poulin, Surlik, Jacobson, and himself, along with Stasinski. Not sure what happened there. Actually, there may have been some drama involving himself and Brad Cathcart, as Cathcart is in the pits at the moment. Cathcart was involved in that fight. However, there's been some drama over the past few moments as we were taking a look at that previous replay of the incident involving Tulo. There's another bit of drama heading down towards the end of this lap. Oh, it was contact heading through. Oh, what in the world happened there?
That is not something
Cathcart
you see every day. That's for sure. He's bouncing around like a top there. So yeah, it looked like Brad just got a little bit loose there, and then Thor got into the back of him, unfortunately. So Thor is not having a good outing today, unfortunately.
That is possibly the most bizarre incident that I've seen in my time covering Weekend Warriors races. I don't really know what to say other than what the hell happened there. Gotta take a look at another angle of this from Thor Tulo's perspective. Okay, so he lost it heading... What in the...
He popped him up like a tiddlywink there for sure. Yeah, it looks like it just grip rolled really hard, and then of course, as we know, iRacing, the physics is only about 4 feet above the car. So as soon as you pop up about 4 feet, physics just goes into moon physics basically, and you'll spin around and flip like crazy. So I'm pretty sure that's what just happened right there.
I gotta say as well that Brad Cathcart, the Australian, racing against Thor Tulo, who despite having a Japanese flag next to his name, he is from the UK, I believe, still is living in a residence in the UK, but nevertheless, that is still one of the most bizarre things that I've seen in the world. I feel like I've gotten whiplash in my neck just looking at that. That was absolutely insane heading through turn number 13. If that doesn't make some sort of highlights reel, I really don't know what would, because what in the world? I nearly broke my professional conduct here on SMB and said a word that I cannot say, because WTF was that? That was... what in the world? I literally do not have words. I am paid to run my mouth, folks. I am rarely, if ever, speechless. That was absolutely ridiculous. What in the world had to transpire for that to happen, for Brad Cathcart's car to move around like a lifeless puppet on a bunch of strings? It looked like his car was caught between ascending to the heavens and descending to the depths of hell. I have never in my life seen something like that. So some UFO activity going on here in Navarra today.
I do remember that, yes. We have had a few pretty strange physics anomalies here and there since my broadcasting days have started around here. And that's just something we all deal with in sim racing, right? It's going to be, you're going to get a little bit of an error here and there. There's going to be some physics issues here and there, a disconnection every once in a while. And we pretty much just rack those up to, it would be no different than a problem on a weekend in real life or something. You forgot a part, something broke on your car, there was a weather event, whatever it might be. You can throw that up to sim racing stuff as well. So we just throw throw that in the basket. But that was a pretty strange little occurrence there for sure, him popping up like a tiddlywink in the air. Doesn't happen every day.
That was insane. I feel like Hurley from the Three Stooges would have made some great sound effects for that. Because what in the world? Speaking of what in the world, we got a fight going on between Jesus Rodriguez and Jim Brewster heading down into turn number 1, 2, and 3. Side by side with Brewster on the inside, Jesus Rodriguez on the outside. Who's going to prevail? Jesus Rodriguez sweeping around the outside and having the good position to get in front of Jim Brewster. That's the thing with turns 1, 2, and 3 around this racetrack. I don't think there is a good line around there. It's really just what line is the least terrible. So surprisingly enough, despite the fact he was stuck on the outside line, Jesus Rodriguez was still able to hold off that challenge from Brewster. This racetrack is it's a complete oddity in the world of motorsports.
Yeah, it really is. It really is a bit of a counterintuitive track. It's got some very strange, all these things that you learn at other tracks and hone your skills to do. And then you show up at Navarra and it sort of all goes out the window. The back half of the course is pretty standard, but the front half of the course is really something you have to spend the time to learn. And it does look like people have put in the time here and they've learned it. But getting passes around here in those first few complexes of corners it's like trying to put a puzzle together.
I really like that choice of phrase there, Josh. It really is like trying to put together a puzzle. And with these Formula V races, a lot of people just think, oh yeah, you're just going to drive as fast as you can for about 30 minutes, and if you win, you win. No, there's a lot of strategy that goes into these races, despite the fact that we don't have to worry about pit stops in this series. You got to figure out when to push, when to try and get the draft, when to try and go for the move. When you want to be risky, when you want to be a little bit more cautious. There's so much strategy that goes into these races outside of the ones down pit lane. And that's usually what we see determine who wins these races when everything is said and done. Outright pace is outright pace, but you got to have a little bit of smarts behind you to be able to seal the deal when everything is said and done. Got to say, the gap between Jason Green and Trent Kramer has gone down significantly over the past few moments. Guido Marzucchi now getting that move done on Trent Kramer to take P2. I think we have some shuffling a little bit farther up the road as we were taking a look at that fight involving Parsons Human and Wohlbold. Here it is, Marzucchi running in the second position at this point in time, trying to hold off a challenge from Kramer and Heemskerk. He also, they're well farther back, but Brewster and Rodriguez are still battling. And if these drivers come to blows, we could see those drivers get involved in this fight in some way, shape, or form. But as it stands at the moment, Jason Green is still leading this race, 1.3 seconds in front of Marzucchi. But this fight behind him is absolute pandemonium, and Jason Green may find himself in the midst of it very soon.
Yeah, it is totally possible that this pack of cars ends up catching up to him here by using the draft. If they're smart and they can play together, then they may actually be able to catch him. And like you were saying there, Ron, it takes lots of people can drive fast. So I believe it was a Mario Andretti quote where he says, first you learn how to drive fast, then you learn how to drive fast for 2 hours, then you learn how to drive fast for 2 hours in traffic. And those are all different things and things that you have to learn separately from each other. So yes, there is a ton of strategy. Even when the car is slow like this, there is a ton of strategy out there. If you want to pass that person, it's going to cost you some time, that sort of thing. You have to make good decisions out there and try to stay with the lead pack, or you lose the lead pack. And it looks like perhaps Guido here is taking that advice here, and he's trying to get away from this pack. Hopefully Trenton and Guido can work together here, and they'll actually be able to catch up to Jason.
Hey, teamwork makes the dream work. I have heard that in an elementary school class before. So I think these drivers, despite the fact that they aren't actually teammates, are going to try and work together as some. Because as it stands currently, if they just battle like it's going out of style, Jason Green is going to pull that gap yet again. 18 and a half minutes on the clock of this 30-minute long race. So coming up to the halfway mark, well, already past the halfway mark, my apologies. Well past it. We went to the halfway mark so quickly we didn't even acknowledge it when we hit it. But at this point in time, these drivers still continuing to fight. The game of leapfrog continues with Trent Kramer slipping up into P2 overall. Heemskerk trying to get past Marzucchi, heading down into turn number 3. Looks like Heemskerk tried to get that move done, but he's mega sideways midway through the corner. And that's going to allow Guido Marzucchi in that Fox Anderson Racing Team number 19 car to slip his way back up into P3 overall and P2 of the Spec 1 drivers.
Yeah, I'd like to just kind of see how that transpired again here into T1. You can see this is probably a pretty good example of just how this corner works out. You're trying to come up the inside here, and it really looks like it's going to work out. You have the line, it's good, but you have to compromise so hard here coming into the next one that you just can't get the line out, and Guido easily takes the momentum and gets in front of him there. So like we were saying before, it is kind of like a puzzle or a chess game trying to figure out that T1 and getting a pass done in it correctly.
Yeah, that section, I mean, we mentioned how difficult it is to try and decipher just when you're running all by yourself, but trying to get a move done through there, it's tricky enough single file, let alone side by side or even 3 wide that we saw towards the very beginning. However, these drivers are going to have to live with that soon. Jason Green may have to live with it. Jesus Rodriguez and Jim Brewster have been living that reality for quite some time. They've been battling hard, and they are slowly losing touch with the cars in front. Gotta say, if they battle exceptionally hard and there's a little bit of teamwork behind, we could see them fall back into the crutches of the likes of Ken Poulin, Surlick, and Jacobson running towards the tail end of the top 10. As an incident for David Fitzgerald, that's going on to the back straightaway, coming out of turn number 8. So not sure what happened to the American in the 258 car for him to go around. Here's a replay.
Yeah, we'll see what transpired here. It may have just been a spin on his own. This is a very difficult corner. So it looks like he's setting it up here, and he got a little help from I believe that's Jason Grider behind him, perhaps. Yeah, unfortunately, he got a little tap there. So.
Yeah, that's a shame. Small little bit of contact can definitely upset you in these race cars. Trent Kramer in the Spec 2 category has just taken the lead of the race overall as Marzuki goes for a move on Heemskirk. So Trent Kramer, who just set the fastest lap of the race not terribly long ago, certainly enjoying the draft off the back of Jason Green's #1 race car. That was a stormer of a lap time for him. He's the first driver to break into the 201 territory. The first driver, I believe, to break underneath the 2-minute 3s, let alone the 2-minute 2s. And here's the move that Trent Kramer pulled off with authority, heading down into turn number 1 and 2. Looks like Jason Green's just going to back out of this on that outside line. He's like, hey, we're running in a good position. If we work together, we could just make this a fight between us two, and then the fight's going to be on in the final 10 minutes of this race. And that was a terrible voice crack that just came out of my mouth a couple of moments ago.
That's okay, we'll forgive you, Ron. But yeah, that's exactly right. Jason Green just got out of the way there, basically, right? He saw it coming. He knows that if he tries to block that, it's just going to be bad news for both of them, and they're both going to lose time. So there's no point. You let Trenton through. You try to get on the back of him and see if you can pull away and get past him later. Otherwise, Guido and Heemskirk are going to be on your butt in no time.
Looking at this fight right now, it's a 2-2 at the moment. However, it could very quickly and very easily become a 4-car pack trying to decide the victory in this race. And really, it's the fight for the overall victory, the overall podium positions, and also the win in the Spec 2 and Spec 1 categories as well. A lot riding on this fight that we're seeing develop between all of these drivers. If you're Stefan Heemskirk, though, you're hoping that Guido Marzuki can start bending the floor pan of his Formula V just a little bit to try and close up that gap to himself and Jason Green, which is coming up to about a second now. So Trent Kramer still leading it over Green in P2. However, looks like Green pulling out of the draft, heading down into turn number 1, maybe saving it up. He did not want to go side by side heading through this section unless he's going for a sneak attack, which, hey, you never know. Looks like they're going to close up a whole lot midway through the corner. Kramer running wide on exit, very much at risk of picking up a slowdown penalty as a result of that. Rodriguez and Bruce are a little bit farther back. Meanwhile, they've swapped positions with Rodriguez now in 5th. But it looks like Green is not close enough to get that move done on Trent Kramer. Well, he is close enough to try and think about going for a move. However, he's playing the patient game, and I can't necessarily say I blame him for that strategy either.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if there's someone out there who has patience, you know, in the Weekend Warriors, it's Jason Green. He definitely very calculated guy. He's going to figure out what kind of pass he needs to make, and then he's going to try to make it. He's not going to do too many outlandish moves or anything like that. It also looks like very impressed here with Guido as well, who's just clicking laps off. He's made some passes. He's not losing time doing it, and now he's catching the front of the pack. So clearly he's thinking in the car there, and I would not be surprised if he could definitely take a win today, I think. We'll see what happens.
And one of the hard chargers we've had in this race was Jesus Rodriguez. However, he's had a moment over the past few moments, and he's actually dropped down to P9, was involved in the fight with himself and Jim Brewster, running P5 and P6 respectively. Now he's running effectively in the middle of nowhere around this racetrack, which is effectively in the middle of nowhere in real life. Gotta take a look at a replay to see what went wrong with Rodriguez coming onto the back straightaway and a big bit of contact to the inside wall.
Yeah, so that was just classic big old rumble strip there. He definitely hit he went a little bit wide in that corner, and there's a couple curbs in this that are, on a car like this, I would imagine you're scraping the bottom. You almost high side yourself just going over them, and I'm pretty sure that's just what happened to Jesus there, unfortunately.
And with that wall contact, he certainly picked up a significant amount of damage on that number 76 car. He actually picked up a meatball flag by iRacing as well, so he has been mandated to come back down pit lane. That is going to be a game changer for him. Looking at the front, though, Green and Kramer side by side heading down into turn number 3, and Green going to be able to retake the lead in convincing fashion over Kramer. But looking at these drivers continuing to battle, if they start to trade blows too much, we gotta see Marzuki and Heemskerk involved in that fight. That gap was about a second not terribly long ago. It's now down to about a half a second, so this is slowly turning into a 4-car fight at the front of this race with less than 5 minutes to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely saw that coming. So these guys at the front here, you know, Trenton and Jason are both veterans to the series here, and they know how to stay out front. That being said, they want to race and they want to win too, and you just can't be fast when you're trying to pass somebody else, and that's only going to bring Marzucci and Heemskerk into the picture here. So I would expect that we have a 4-car battle, hammer and tong here real soon.
Yeah, this is going to be it's going to be a dogfight for sure. I'm trying to think of what phraseology to use to describe what is certainly going to be a very dramatic conclusion to this Formula Vee Weekend Warriors race, round number 4 of the season at Navarra. It's a track that a lot of people don't have a whole lot of experience around, considering it was just introduced to iRacing just a couple of seasons ago. But these drivers, they were pushing it to the absolute limit and a little bit over that as well. But despite that, they are still trying to give us the best show possible here at Navarra today. Not sure what that was with my voice for a brief second. Not sure what's going on here, but nevertheless, work out a southern accent for a very brief period of time. But Jason Green running a little bit wide coming out of the final corner, and that's going to allow Trent Kramer to be side by side with him coming down the start finish straightaway, about to click over to lap 14, one of the final laps of this race. And look at Guido Marzucchi. Is he going to make it 3 wide? He has the run, he has the speed. Will he try and make it 3 wide, or is he going to be content just putting Jason Green right behind him side by side, heading down into turn number 1, now through turn number 2, into turn number 3. Marzucchi going to have that inside line. Green, meanwhile, trying to hang it around the outside. Very close between these two. Too close between the two of them. Heading out of turn number 3. They're still going to be side by side, heading down into 4 right now. That was near disaster between the two of them. I was fully expecting both of those cars to go off the racetrack in a cloud of dust and steam. But Stefan Heemskerk running right behind nearly got a fantastic view of all of that. You can tell from how dirty his visor is. That was terrible grammar from me. You can tell from how dirty his visor is that he is seeing a whole lot of questionable things happen in front of him. He's seeing a whole lot of tire smoke, whole lot of engine smoke. He is seeing a whole lot of smoke, and he may see those 2 cars in front of him go off in a cloud of smoke in the not too distant future. Speaking of a cloud of smoke, not sure who that was that may have had a moment coming out of turn number 12 a couple of moments ago. Saw that in the corner of my eye as it went onto the back straightaway on the 14th lap of this race. Kramer running wide coming out of turn number 9. This may be the opportunity for Jason Green to retake the lead of this race, and it will be the opportunity that Green seizes. But this fight is on. 4 cars covered by less than 0.8 of a second. It is a matter of feet separating these cars at the front of the field, and we're trying to decide an overall victory, an overall podium, and the winners in both of the classes. With less than 2 minutes left on the clock, we're coming to the white flag this time by, and at this point, Josh, it could be anybody's to win.
Yeah, absolutely. You saw their last lap, Guido's move into T1. Beautiful between him and Jason there as well. They kept off of each other. That was just great. That is how you make that look. It's not easy. That looked easy. It's not to stay off each other in that situation and still come out with any sort of speed as well. But it looks like we're going to do it one more time here into T1.
Oh, here we go. The white flag is in the air. Will we go 3 wide? We are going 3 wide. Will we go 4 wide? Looks like Heemskerk is going to try and force that issue. Ooh, boy, they nearly made contact heading through turn number 1. They nearly came to blows. Look at Green on the inside in a cloud of smoke trying to find any sort of way, wheeling that Formula Vee race car. He wants to go back to victory lane. He loved the taste of champagne 1 week ago at Mid-Ohio. He wants to continue that streak thus far, but Trent Kramer leading them coming out of turn number 4 for the final time. Looks like Green gonna try and get a move done on Guido Morzuki heading off into turn number 5. One of the fastest corners around this racetrack, and they're gonna come to blows. Green going to go around spinning like a top. That's going to take him out of this fight, and that's actually giving a pretty good gap to Trent Kramer. It's now 0.6 of a second between himself and Guido Morzuki. Morzuki now trying to battle hard to remain in P2 overall. He's now inherited the Spec 1 win as a result of this, because there you can see Jason Green. He is well farther back. That was 3 wide off into turn number 5 in a section of the track that feels like it was built over a sinking swamp. That is a recipe for disaster, and that's the reason why those drivers came to blows. But the fight continues with Heemskerk and Morzuki heading down into turn number 11 for the final time. It looks like Morzuki going to hold on to that spot for the moment. However, Heemskerk is certainly feeling very confident about his chances. It may not be a win in the Spec 2 category like he had 1 week ago at Mid-Ohio. However, he's on track for a pretty darn good result here overall, looking to try and finish P3 overall and P2 in the class. You can see the abuse of track limits coming at turn number 13 for the final time. Kramer, though, he is still at risk, because with a half a second gap, if he gets a slightly bad exit coming out of the final corner and Morzuki goes for a dive like he's trying to do, it's a very long run up until that start-finish line, so Morzuki may not be out of it. He definitely took a little bit of liberties with those track limits coming out of the final quarter. You can see them drifting, coming to the line, Morzuki and Kramer is going to win it over Guido Morzuki in P2, and Stefan Heemskerk gonna round out your podium in third. And for the first time this season, we've got a Spec 2 driver winning this race overall, and Trent Kramer had to fight like hell to get that job done, but he does it. He's the victor here at Navarra from the 4th round of this 2024 Season 4 season. Man, Josh, we're thinking that was going to be a fantastic fight towards the end. I gotta wonder how it would have shaken out if Green was in the midst of that as well. But that was still a hell of a lot of fun on the final lap of that race.
Yeah, absolutely, yep, for sure. It was always going to work out like that. I think you were going to have a group of cars at the end there that were all going to be vying for T1. Something had to give, and unfortunately it was Jason Green this time. We'll have to go back and have a quick look at the replay there and see if we can't assign some blame, but honestly it just kind of looked like everybody trying to race the same piece of track here again. Let's have a quick peek, Ron.
I gotta say, as we take a look at the formative stages of this replay, Brian Szynski racing in a trailer at the SEC National Championship runoffs ended up in P9 when everything is said and done. But here's that contact between Green and Morzuki, the 2 drivers in the Spec 1 category, battling hard towards the end of this race. However, fisticuffs break out and ends in tears for really the both of them, because with that contact, it pretty much assured the victory for Trent Kramer. But Green was wheeling that thing on the inside. You can see a little bit of understeer. That car jolts up a little bit into the air, and that's what ended up spinning Jason Green around. But that was a brilliant conclusion to this race. That was absolutely fantastic. Gotta say, Trent Kramer, I think he may be one of the most impressive drivers from that race, because he ends up winning it not only in this race but overall as well. And that's a big impact into the outside wall.
Yeah,
so
that's how you
Trent
gotta do
Kramer, yeah, celebrating a win with a trip to the body shop. But Trent Kramer certainly very happy with how things shook out for him. I'm not sure if there is a jump around this racetrack. Some of these drivers may be going for it, though. Guido Morzuki looks like he's not going to try and go for a jump. That's the thing. Some iRacing tracks need some more jumps, because after what happened 1 week ago at Mid-Ohio, man, I'm already losing my voice a little bit, running out of breath here after this race is over, after these scenes that we saw after the race in Mid-Ohio 1 week ago that made me wheeze to the point of losing out on my voice and having to skip out on the Weekend Warriors broadcast the day after, because my cold officially kicked my butt, considering I was laughing so hard. We need some more jumps around these racetracks. Don't need some barriers for Guido Morzuki to hit, though. That was a small little blip on otherwise a pretty good race for him. Jason Green, meanwhile, oh no, I don't have a good feeling about this at all. Oh, God.
Oh, a little bit of gyro effect there in the air. That was impressive. Yep, very nice work there from Jason. We've all, the Weekend Warriors is one thing that we definitely all rally around at the end of races is trying to find silly things to do with the cars and jumps to hit or places to park them, and this is no exception here today. But huge props to Trenton Kramer today. What an amazing race he put on. He started, I forget exactly where he started, but he made his way up through the field very easily and confidently there, and then finished out nice and strong. So good job on Trenton with the S2 overall victory.
Yeah, well done for him, and he becomes the first driver in this series since Chris Montgomery at the last race of last season to win one of these races overall as a Spec 2 driver. And speaking of, I think we'll get the results loaded up in just a couple of moments' time from a fantastic day of racing action here at Navarra for the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors exclusively here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. If you're in the mood for some more Weekend Warriors action, you can catch out the stuff that's going to be coming up the next few days. We've got Formula Ford action, Spec Racer Ford action as well. Whole lot of stuff here on SMB essentially every single day. It's going to be a great season of racing action from all of these series, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun to just look at from our perspective in the commentary booth. This season has been fantastically entertaining thus far, and it's going to continue from now all the way through until the beginning of December. We'll get those results loaded up in just a couple of moments' time. There we go. Trenton Kramer wins it when everything is said and done. The driver of the number 444 car, who I think we're going to have a chat with in a couple of moments' time. He ends up winning it when everything is said and done. Guido Marzuki going to be finishing the top running of the Spec 1 drivers. He ends up in P2, and I believe he may possibly be able to take some pretty good inroads in that championship fight, considering the drama that befell Jason Green and Thortulo throughout today's race. Then Stefan Heemskirk off the back of winning in the Spec 1 category, Spec 2 category, my apologies, 1 week ago at Mid-Ohio. He's going to round out your overall podium in third. That's going to be Jason Green. Small low incident towards the end that knocks him out of contention for the victory. He ends up in P4 when everything is said and done. Jim Brewster going to round out your overall top 5. Ken Poulin in 6th. Jeff Jacobson in 7th. Brian Szczynski actually ends up in P8 when everything is said and done. So well done for Brian running in the trailer that the Szczynskis have set up at the SCCA National Championship runoffs at Road America this weekend. Well done for him to be able to wheel that thing to an 8th place result when everything is said and done. Alan DeGassis finishes this race in 9th. Morn Human going to round out your overall top 10. Jesus Rodriguez finishes in 11th. Michael Lattarulo ends up in 12th. Hank Mellon 13th. Thortulo in P14, a disappointing result for the driver that entered this race with the championship lead. And Russell Telker going to round out your top 15.
Yeah, right on. It was a little interesting there. Yeah, Thor unfortunately didn't really have a great run there, and we actually got it was a great race there. We definitely mixed up the field a little bit. We got Russell Telker in 15th, Michelle Lynn in 16th, Ryan Serlich in 17th, Gary Wolbolt in 18th. We have Jason Grider in 19th, Nick Tullo, Dave Fitzgerald, Don Parsons, Joshua Flores, Brad Cathcart in 24th, Jason Perry in 25th, and Adam Thompson unfortunately having some sort of a technical there, I believe. I'm not 100% sure. We'll have to figure that out. And didn't finish the race.
Well, I will not reveal too much. However, I heard some of the chats that were going on. I believe the technical issue for our buddy here at SMB was an Alt F4 early on in this race. Tough stuff, though, because he was on track for a pretty good result. Maybe picked up a meatball flag for some damage that he may have picked up in an incident earlier on, but nevertheless, those are the results from this 4th round of the Formula Vee Weekend Warriors season. Actually, gonna have a chat with some drivers before we wrap things up. And the first driver that I want to have a chat with is not going to be our winner. I'll save that for you, Josh. I'm going to have a chat with a man who is probably very exhausted when everything is said and done. Mr. Brian Szczynski racing from inside of the trailer. Talk us through a very odd experience running around this very odd racetrack.
I don't like this racetrack, and I never got enough practice in, which probably leads me to not like it. But this trailer, it's 65 degrees outside, and got up to like 90 in the trailer during that race. I tried to have the door shut with no ventilation to avoid the glare, and then the sun moved enough to peek through and slice through the screen with a nice beam of light. So I'm just happy to finish.
I mean, with all that taken into consideration, I can't necessarily blame you. We're seeing your brother Dan kind of talk about the difficulties that you were finding running throughout this race with the temperature. That is, I feel like that's like a medieval form of torture. That is absolutely terrible, but still. Running up there at the SCCA National Championship runoffs at the moment, and before we ask you about the race and everything to go with this season, I want to ask you about all the stuff that's been going on with you and the family up there at Road America for the runoffs, kind of having a little bit of an esports meet and greet. You want to tell the viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, Wednesday night was the block party up here, and I had about 25 pounds of meat that I spent all day smoking, and it was gone in 5 to 10 minutes. And, just tons of people showing up, a lot of corner workers. And I will say, everybody watch the Formula Vee broadcast live on YouTube, SCCA's channel, tomorrow. I think it's at around 10 o'clock Central Time. And I'm definitely getting the SMB and Ray Esports flags. My brother and I are going to the grid to stand along with the flags, and we're just going to force our way into that broadcast.
Hell yeah, man. I was just going to thank you for all the promotion you've done for SMB and all the promotion you've done for the series as well up there at Road America this weekend. I've been seeing a lot of the photos to come out of it all, and it's been pretty cool to see. So thankfully, we're not going to be running at Navarra throughout the rest of the season for you, so we're going to be heading to Oschersleben in about a week's time. Still probably going to be a little bit exhausted after the trip up to Road America for the runoffs, but how do you think that race is going to be in 1 week's time?
A little bit better, and we've been there before, so we kind of have a feeling of it, and we'll see. I mean, it's going to be a long unpack program I'm going to have when I get back home tomorrow, and we'll see.
That we certainly will. And now, Brian, before we let you go and try and cool off and actually get out into the slightly cool Wisconsin air, before we let you go and cool off, is there anyone you want to give a thanks to or shout out?
Everybody here. My mom's up here now, my brother and sister, dad, everybody's up here at the track now. And everybody in SCCA, it's such a fun event they have. It's a week long, and it's 26 races in 3 days. So I'm gonna go hop back on the moped and catch some more live racing.
Alrighty, there we go, man. That's a fantastic way to spend an afternoon. And as someone who went to the SCCA Solo Nationals out in Lincoln, Nebraska about 5 times, I know how much of a party that was. So I'm sure it's even more of a party up at Road America at the moment. So go and enjoy that, and we'll let you go. And excited to see you throughout the rest of the season, man. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
And that right there was Brian Stasinski, and we want to thank Brian yet again for all the stuff that he's done, being a fantastic ambassador for both the Weekend Warriors world along with SMB. And now, Josh, would you like to have a chat with our race winner, Trent Kramer?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you bring him in for me? Trenton, that was a great race from you there. You started at about 5th or 6th place, I believe, and made your way all the way to the front. It was a great charge, nice and clean. How'd you do it?
Well, I used every bit of my off tracks. That's always really helpful. I ended up with 12 out of 13x before I get my drive-through penalty on the final extension to get that win. I was hoping to be able to work with Stefan and Guido a little bit more, but I felt like I had a lot of pace that wasn't really being tapped into. I ran qualifying on 5 gallons of fuel, and unfortunately, it obviously shows in my qualifying pace that running full fuel, I was capable of being up with Jason a little bit closer, but poor planning, and during the race it was just picking and choosing your battles. Wanted to make sure that we're not losing the gap to the front, but I turned around and looked and saw Jesus was chopping about a second off of us over the course of one of the laps, so I decided that 3 wide into turn 1 was the best option, and it worked. So here we are.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking a lot actually about T1 and just how hard and how difficult it really is to actually make a pass happen in T1. And going up the inside is pretty difficult. Well, how do you take a pass going into T1 like that? What's your strategy for that? Do you like to try to just stay behind people through this complex at Navarra into T1 and then try to get it done after, or is T1 a good spot for you to attack?
So on a track like this where you have really rough curbing, you have to be really careful when you choose to try and dive down to the inside. It really upsets these cars. Like, I think they only weigh 500 or 600 pounds or something along those lines. So when you hit even a crack in the asphalt, like, you feel it through everything. So you got to make sure that you're not attacking somebody into a corner where if they pinch you, you're going to hit that curbing and go flying. I kind of did that to Adam in practice. Sorry, Adam. So with going into turn one, one of the other biggest things that I noticed a lot of drivers weren't doing is the track is a lot bigger than what the car needs. So choosing to run a Formula 1 line into turn 1 and 2 where you're doing this really wide arcing sweeper, you're actually lengthening the track by 15-20 feet per corner. And when you do that on a car that's already at its peak velocity by the time that you're getting to that corner anyway, it really hurts the pace in comparison to the person that's chasing you. So if you watch back, you can see that my lines are a lot tighter. I'm not using nearly as much road, and that's because frankly the car doesn't need it. It's overgripped and underpowered, so using extra track only lengthens it.
Yeah, very interesting. I've had the pleasure of racing here in the SRF and the FF as well, and you know, into T1. The idea was kind of try to get out to that curb nice and wide, touch it, and then cut back in, probably because they had more power. So it's pretty interesting to hear that you weren't really trying to get out to those curbs on the left-hand side. You're trying to stay a bit tighter to the inside just to shorten the track a bit in the V.
Exactly, yeah, and especially when you get out on those rumble strips, some of those rumble strips are tall enough that it actually bottoms the car out, so it causes drag entering the corner. And sometimes you'll hit the rumbles, sometimes you won't, and it changes where you actually need to brake. And sometimes, unfortunately, it upsets the chassis and you end up spun around in front of people too. So,
right, certainly, I definitely experienced that in the FF and the SRF, and the curbs around here can be a bit rough for sure. And they do slow you down a little too, I would imagine. In this, if you get out there and touch that rumble, it's actually going to slow you down a little bit. But that was a great race, Trenton. You took the overall victory, I believe, in S2. Are you in S2 category? Did we get that right today, or are you actually S1 driver?
I actually bumped myself up into S1. I've got the I rating to qualify for S2, but I decided that it would be best to be in S1. Apparently my number didn't get transferred over, so I'll send through a request on that once we're all said and done here.
Yeah, I suspected as much there. I was actually the one who did the overrides today, and I just went off of your I rating. So that was an S1 victory from Trenton Kramer today then. Excellent drive, nice and clean. Not an easy track to make passes at, not an easy track to keep your head together and stay in the draft and make it forward as you did. Is there anybody you'd like to thank?
Definitely want to thank Grass Paddock Motorsports. If anybody hasn't met me before on this channel, Grass Paddock Motorsports, we are a rental race car company for Mini Coopers in B-Spec with the SCCA. We currently have 21 race cars in our fleet, and we service the entire East Coast. We're currently setting up to get 2 cars out in California and a car out in Texas. That way we can be the first national coverage of the rental companies. So if you're looking to get into the SCCA and get behind the wheel of a race car, we have some options, and worst case scenario, we've got connections with other teams and other groups of people that do those rentals, and we can get you into a car that you'll enjoy driving. Every single one of our cars I've personally put on the podium at one point in time or another, so every car is very, very competitive. So it's always nice to be able to jump into somebody else's car and know that it's competitive, and you can focus on your driving and not focus on what the car is doing in the setup. Thank you guys for putting on a great broadcast. I was sitting there watching as I was waiting to be abducted into the interview room, and thanks to Stevie and Jim for putting on a great group, as well as Michelle. She's apparently running a good portion of the Formula V's now. Haven't been here in a minute, so gotta shout her out for making sure that we're all taken care of with sponsors and helping the community grow. It seems like we've got a lot bigger group than last year when I ran this.
Yeah, fantastic. We've got a great group of people this season for sure, and that's a really awesome program you got running there, renting race cars, Trenton. That's awesome. We love to see the sim to real life thing here at Ray Esports, so that ties right into everything here. We love having you, and great win, man. We'll see you next week.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
You too.
And that right there was Trenton Kramer, the winner of this race overall. I guess we'll count him as winning in the Spec 1 category, despite the fact he was numbered for Spec 2. No matter how you slice it, though, it was a fantastic drive for Trenton throughout this race. And now, Josh, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Brian a couple of minutes ago. The next race of the season is going to be at another oddity in Europe, that being at Motorsports Arena Oschersleben in Germany. That's a little bit of an unpopular track in the world of racing. Recently became base content in the world of iRacing. So how do you think that race is going to be here for the Formula V's in about a week's time?
Yeah, that's one of those anomaly tracks again that just, I don't know why it's not left an impression on me. I know I've been there, but honestly I can't remember the track very well. So, I mean, it's going to be a lot of the same again, I think, here as well. We've got a lot of really good drivers in this series. Hopefully, because it's not quite as popular of a track, that we'll get some more people showing up because it is now part of the free content. So hopefully we get our full field back. And no matter what track we go to, the V's here on Weekend Warriors are always going to be entertaining. So looking forward to it, Ron.
These Formula V races are always absolutely fantastic, fantastically entertaining, and fantastically action-packed as well from start to finish. We got battles, we've got a whole lot of stuff going on here. And on the subject of talking about stuff going on here, I think we should probably talk about some of the stuff coming up here on Slow Motion Broadcasting over the next few days and the next few weeks as well. Of course, the Formula V Weekend Warriors aren't the only Weekend Warriors series that we have, as we've got the Formula Fords running at Cadwell Park tomorrow on Sunday, October the 16th, exclusively here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, followed by the Spec Racer Fords running at Zolder later on that afternoon. I'm going to be, I believe, on both of those, unless I'm very much mistaken. The scheduling occasionally can get a little bit screwy with the broadcast schedule that I have, but nevertheless, those are going to be the two races that we have for the Weekend Warriors tomorrow, followed by the Cross Series League racing action from Limaland Speedway, the dirt track with the Legends cars. That's going to be a pretty good race that night, tomorrow night to be a bit more precise. And as we just mentioned, the Formula V is going to be running at Oschersleben in 1 week's time on Saturday, October the 12th, exclusively here on Slow Motion Broadcasting, and all of the Weekend Warriors action is here on SMB. And it isn't an SMB thing. However, our colleague Adam Thompson is usually on the air for that. And you should probably check out the racing line on the Ray Esports YouTube channel. I heard, I cannot entirely confirm this or not, but I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, there is a 19-year-old redheaded rube, a littered redheaded rube, that's going to be on that show this upcoming Tuesday. So that gives you more or less of a reason, whichever way you slice it, to tune into that fantastic podcast.
Well, that's fantastic, Ron. I'm going to be on there
Ray
as well, actually, this week. So it'll be you and me talking again on the racing line on Tuesday.
Oh, there we go. That is going to be a barrel of laughs for sure. May God have mercy on anybody tuning into that show. But as for this show here for the Formula V Weekend Warriors, round number 5 of the season at Navarra, that will just about do it. So for myself, Ron Maunz, Josh Wilkie joining me, working the comms and the cams, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all again wherever it is in not too distant future.
I see a Budweiser. Go ahead and hold it up.
Yes. There's
that was
our
the
Budweiser.
biggest clue.
Yes, right
Doing
there.
it for Dale.
Man, it's so many gimmicks, right? I feel like they're making it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, a lot of people, you get polarizing opinions on DRS.
I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about here, but sometimes the effort, it's all about the boys. Hey,
It is.
life sucks sometimes, and you need
Yes.
the boys.
iRacing kind of always has a tendency to kind of buff
Yes.
the new cars just a little bit. I'm not going to go on record saying it's because they want people to spend money on their platform and buy all the new
Conspiracy
content.
confirmed.
But
Yes.
but
We welcome you all to slow motion for this presentation of the Formula Vee Weekend Warrior Series, and we're about to grab the start in just a few moments' time. It's going to be Megan Overstreet leading them to green with Ladar right alongside. We're waiting for that green flag to come at, and the drivers are now on their way. Some of these drivers may be a little bit more aggressive towards the end of this race, as side by side with Love and Degassis heading into 5.
Oh, it's close. It's a bit treacherous on the corner. Rex is just singling run wide there, Ron.
Down the running order, Love and Brewster, meanwhile, they have been in the tow and they've seen all these drivers try and do their own maneuvers. They definitely have something cooking behind the wheel of those FV race cars. As Montgomery gets that move done, one's running at the back. Well, not actually running right now, I don't believe, as there's a spinner with Ladar.
Oh, no.
Oh, and there's contact as well.